Say hello to Tina.
How y'all doing tonight? Alright, my name's Skit, obviously. This is not my first time on this stage. I usually do Poetry Slam for Affinity Lab on fourth Sunday.
Yeah.
Now, I was here at this open mic night a few weeks ago and there was a gentleman that did some stand-up. So after hearing him, I was kind of inspired. So I'd like to thank that gentleman for doing his stand-up. And all you musicians here, you guys are awesome. But I don't play an instrument. My voice is my instrument. Now, this story I'm going to read, this first part of my story, it requires a trigger warning. I hate trigger warnings. Really, I do. And, but I understand that in open space, you got to put them out there because some people might feel some things that they don't want to feel. But before I start, I want to ask you about these triggers because, like, when Phil Collins sang, "Well, I was there and I saw what you did, saw it with my own two eyes, so you can wipe all that grin, I know where you've been, it's all been a pack of lies." You didn't need a trigger warning to let you know that somebody in that song had been hurt. When Melissa Etheridge, when she sang, "Please, baby, can't you see I'm trying to explain? I've been here before and I'm locking the door and I'm not going back again." You knew she had been hurt, right? And finally, when Adele belted out, "There's a fire starting in my heart, reaching a fever pitch and it's bringing me out the dark," you knew that she too had been hurt. And we don't need trigger warnings for songs, because we all know that music comes from a place of feeling. With stories and poems, they come from the same place, and sometimes that place hurts. Now, this short story I'm going to read is called Shadow. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Have you ever been afraid of your own shadow? You catch a glimpse of the dark figure out of the corner of your eye and you immediately go into defense mode only to realize that it's your shadow, but the fear stays. I find it's a rather unique experience that folk don't talk about. It's embarrassing to admit that I'm afraid of my own shadow, but that has been a truth of mine. Growing up, people used to call me strong because I didn't take any shit. I've explained it in later years saying that people couldn't hurt me any more than I was being hurt at home. And this is what's true. I was taught to fear. People outside the home who tried to belittle me and degrade me were nothing compared to the degradation I got at home. They were literally child's play. And I had nothing to fear from them. They talked a lot of shit, called me names, wouldn't associate with me except on a limited basis. I was free. And I had no problem with them thinking or acting that way. They were actually safer that way. But don't get me wrong, there were times when it did hurt when I wasn't part of the group. But even when it did hurt, there was nothing in me that would allow myself to be a part of it. I was taught to fear. So when I say I was afraid of my own shadow, I'm telling the God's honest truth. Even today, I catch a glimpse out of my peripheral and I still freeze. But I do understand now that it's just a reflection of me. But it's the darkness of the shadow that still haunts me. The shadow is dangerous, and even when you can't see the shadow, you know it's there. The shadow represents horror and violence and pain beyond imagination. Gory movies show you the violence, but they can never convey the pain of it. How does one describe what the lash of a belt feels like? You can tell the whistle of its movement, you can tell the slap of its strike, but nowhere will you find the feel of it when it hits. There's nothing to compare it to. It's like the blinding of the eyes. The ears scream with an ungodly ringing never heard. The scream is silenced by the sheer magnitude of the pain. The body tries to crumble, but it can't. The weight is 1,000 trillion years. And if you're 5 years old and you have to endure that, who else can hurt you? A shadow. And I can feel it coming in the air tonight. But I'll get back to the Lord thing in just a moment. Now, I grew up in a small town, one square mile, one traffic light, handful of black folk. Our home in this small town was different. People who grew up there, we called it the war zone. Yeah, I know, it's kind of hard to believe a whole war zone in a small town, right? But that's what it was. It was a war zone. But sometimes in this war zone, there were things that happened that were just plain funny, right? So, like, the time when I was 13, I had a crush on my stepmother's cousin. He was half black and half Japanese, and to my young self, this brother was fine. And now, at this time, my stepmother, she didn't like to wear clothes around the house. You know, that was a normal thing in the war zone. She wasn't the first stepmother to do it either. And on this one day, she's straightening her hair, standing in the living room, naked with a straightening comb, and somebody knocks on the door, and my 13-year-old self goes to answer the door, and don't you know it? There stood my crush in all his fineness. Oh my gosh. And you know 13-year-olds, young, dumb, stupid. I was just dumb. And I'm like, hey, come on in, come on in. He steps up, and his face changes. I'm like, shit, what do I do now? And I turn to look to see what he's looking at, and there's my stepmother in all her nakedness with this straightening comb, and I'm like, I froze. I did not know what to do. If the crush hadn't moved, I might still be standing there not knowing what to do. So, on another occasion, this crush was giving me a ride home. We get to my house, we're sitting in the driveway, and he asked me for a kiss, young. I was like, ooh. That's a kiss, right? Turns out it was like so much more than my stepmother. She was standing at the door, and she saw it, and she went off. And I gotta tell you, my stepmother's one of those women who probably shouldn't curse. She was like, what the damn shit is this? And I'm like, oh gosh, I might have laughed if I hadn't been so terrified. And she's going off, and then suddenly she's like, you need to speak to his girlfriend. I'm like, he has a girlfriend? So she gets this woman on the phone, who I don't know, from a can of paint, and I'm like, I'm going to get my ass kicked for sure. She puts me on the phone, and this woman asked me the strangest question. She said, did you sleep with him? And I'm like, sleep? How on God's green earth did we get there, and why is that so troublesome? What is wrong with this woman? And I was like, well, no, escaped an ass woman, right? But this sleep together thing is, you know, the equivalent of the biblical to know. And my father being a preacher, I had heard the phrase, and he knew her. I heard that a million times, right? Years and years later, I'm homeschooling my kids, doing my due diligence, doing the Bible study, and I got that plain English version, you know, because King James Version was these and nows. Who understands those anyway? And I'm reading this passage, and Jacob's getting married, and he goes into her, and wait, what? Oh my gosh, I told the kids, I'll take a break, Bible study's over, go grab the King James Version, because I know it doesn't say that. I know this. Flipping through the pages, and I'm reading, and he knew her. See, that's what it says. And he, oh my God. And that's when I realized what that lady meant when I was 13, when she asked me, did I sleep with him? And so today, with some confidence, I can say, let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about sex. Woo! Yeah.